I am the lead backend engineer for OmniCart, the largest industrial e-commerce platform in the Midwest. We process roughly $4 million in transactions every single day. My job, simply put, is to make sure the money moves from the customer's credit card to our bank account without vanishing into the ether. 3 months ago, a new chief technology officer named Gavin fired me. He sat across from me in a glass-walled office, wearing a $$400 fleece vest, and told me that my salary was bloated. He said the payment infrastructure I built was fully automated, so he didn't need a senior engineer to babysit it. He called me a janitor. He said he needed architects, not plumbers. He was right about one thing: the system is automated. I wrote the Python scripts myself. They are elegant, efficient, and relentless. But Gavin forgot to ask how the automation stays secure. Our payment processor, VaultPay, requires a military-grade security key rotation every 90 days. To rotate that key, the system initiates a handshake. It requests a 6-digit two-factor authentication code to prove a human is watching. That code is sent via SMS to the root administrator's private cell phone. My http://phone. My phone just buzzed on the nightstand. It is 3 a.m. It's the code. Gavin doesn't have my number. And in exactly 10 minutes, the handshake will fail. There is a specific kind of silence that exists in a server room, or in the home office of a back-end engineer at 3 a.m. It isn't a true silence. It is a textured, humming quiet, the sound of cooling fans spinning at 1,200 RPM, the faint whine of coil whine from a GPU, the rhythmic blinking of a router's heartbeat LED. For 10 years, this was the soundtrack of my life. It was the sound of OmniCart sleeping. Most people think of e-commerce as the pretty pictures on the website. They think of the user interface, the add to cart button, the high-resolution photos of DeWalt drills, the smooth CSS animations that slide the checkout drawer open. That's the front end. That's the paint. My world was the plumbing. My world was the dark, unseen pipes where the actual data lived. OmniCart wasn't just a shop, it was a logistics leviathan. We supplied heavy machinery, construction materials, and industrial hardware to contractors across 5 states. When a construction firm in Ohio orders 10 tons of rebar at 7 a.m., they expect the transaction to clear instantly so their trucks can roll by 8 a.m. If the payment hangs, the trucks wait. If the trucks wait, the concrete pours are delayed. If the concrete is delayed, the project loses money. My job was to ensure that never happened. The core of our financial nervous system was an integration with a payment gateway called VaultPay. VaultPay was the gold standard in transaction processing, expensive, rigid, and paranoid. They didn't use static API keys that lasted forever. They used a protocol called rolling security. Imagine changing the locks on your house every single time the season changed. That was VaultPay. Every 90 days, the cryptographic key that allowed OmniCart servers to talk to VaultPay's bank would expire. Hard stop. If you tried to process a transaction on day 91 with the key from day 90, the bank's firewall would treat you like a Russian hacker. It would return a 401 unauthorized error and drop the connection. To manage this, I had written a script. Rotator. Pi. It was a masterpiece of defensive coding. It lived on our primary production server, a silent sentinel watching the calendar. On the 89th day of every cycle, at exactly 3 o'clock UTC, the script would wake up. It would ping the VaultPay API and request a key rotation. But VaultPay, in their infinite paranoia, required a human element. They didn't trust robots. To finalize the rotation, they triggered a two-factor authentication challenge. They would send a 6-digit one-time password, OTP, to the registered mobile device of the root administrator. For the last 5 years, that device was my personal iPhone. I had conditioned myself to wake up for it. It was a Pavlovian response. At 2:58 a.m., my internal clock would jolt me awake. I would sit up in the dark, the glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds, and wait. BZZZT. There it was. The vibration on the nightstand. I would pick up the phone, squinting against the harsh blue light. From VaultPay Security MSG, your verification code is 884 to 291. I would slide out of bed, walk to my desk, and wake my laptop. The terminal window would already be open, the script pausing at a prompt, awaiting input. I would type the numbers. 884,291. Enter. The screen would scroll with green text. Handshake accepted. Greater than new key generated, SK_live_99283. Greater than old key retired. Greater than database updated. Greater than rotation complete. Next cycle, 90 days. Total time elapsed, 45 seconds. I would close the laptop, take a sip of water, and go back to sleep. The next morning, the sales team would come in, the warehouse robots would spin up, and $4 million would flow through the pipes I maintained. Nobody thanked me. Nobody even knew I had been awake. And that was how I liked it. Good engineering is invisible. If you do your job perfectly, people start to wonder if you do anything at all. You become a ghost in the machine, a silent guardian of the uptime. But the problem with being invisible is that when the budget cuts come, you look like empty space. I remember the last successful rotation I performed. It was a Tuesday in July. The air conditioning in my apartment was broken, and I was sweating as I typed the code. I remember feeling a sense of pride as the success message flashed. I had built a fortress. OmniCart had never suffered a security breach, never lost a transaction, never missed a payment cycle. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I would perform the ritual as an employee. The company had just been acquired by a private equity firm called Apex Partners. They were bringing in their own management team. They talked about trimming the fat. They talked about modernizing the stack. I wasn't worried. I was the lead backend engineer. I wrote the stack. I was the stack. You don't fire the guy who holds the keys to the vault, right? I was naive. I thought competence was a shield. I didn't realize that to a man with a spreadsheet and a bonus tied to quarterly savings, a senior engineer's salary looks a lot like a line item waiting to be deleted. The 90-day clock began ticking that night in July. Tick, tick, tick. And then, Gavin arrived. Gavin looked like he had been 3D printed from a JPEG of a tech bro found on a stock photo website. He was 28 years old, wore a Patagonia fleece vest over a button-down shirt that cost more than my car payment, and he spoke exclusively in a dialect I call linked, in English. He had been installed as the new CTO 2 weeks after the acquisition. His resume was a laundry list of short stints at disruptive startups, companies that burned through millions in venture capital, produced nothing of value, and then pivoted to crypto or AI before quietly imploding. To the private equity guys, this looked like dynamic experience. To me, it looked like a warning label. I was summoned to his office on a Tuesday morning. It was the fishbowl, the central glass-walled office that overlooked the engineering pit. The symbolism was subtle. I am above you, watching. Mason, Gavin said, not looking up from his MacBook Air. Grab a seat. Thanks for making the bandwidth. I sat down. Morning, Gavin. What's up? He spun his chair around, clasping his hands behind his head. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was a predatory smile, the kind a shark gives a seal before lunch. I've been doing a deep dive into the commit logs for the last 2 quarters, he started, gesturing vaguely at a dashboard on his second monitor. I'm looking at output metrics. KPIs. Lines of code shipped per engineer. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I knew where this was going. And? I asked. And frankly, Mason, your numbers are concerning. You haven't pushed a major feature branch in 3 months. Your GitHub activity is a flatline compared to the junior devs. Sarah shipped the new search bar last week. Jason pushed the mobile UI refresh. You're mostly doing. What is this? Dependency updates? Log rotation? He said log rotation with the same disdain one might use for cleaning the toilets. I maintain the back end, Gavin, I said, keeping my voice level. I don't ship new features because the core system is stable. My job is to make sure it stays stable. I manage the database sharding, the API rate limiting, and the payment gateway integration. If I do my job right, nothing changes. The site just works. Gavin sighed, shaking his head like a disappointed parent. See, that's the old way of thinking. Legacy mindset. We're a growth company now. We need builders. We need velocity. We need to move fast and break things. If we break the payment processing, I said dryly, we don't break things. We break the bank account. He waved his hand dismissively. The payment system is automated, isn't it? I looked at the architecture diagrams. It's all Python scripts and cron jobs. It runs itself. The execution is automated, I corrected him. The oversight is not. Security requires human verification. Specifically, the key rotation for VaultPay. VaultPay, he interrupted, latching onto the word. Right. That's another thing. We're paying a premium for that service. I'm thinking of migrating us to Stripe or something leaner next quarter. But that's beside the point. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. The smile vanished. The point is, Mason, your salary is significantly higher than the market rate for someone who is essentially doing maintenance work. You're a senior engineer, but you're doing janitorial tasks. The word hung in the air. Janitorial. I built this system, Gavin. From scratch. When I started, this company was processing orders on a spreadsheet. I scaled it to 4 million a day. Past performance is not an indicator of future results, he recited, likely quoting a textbook he skimmed in business school. We need architects, not plumbers. We need to trim the fat to make room for new hires in AI and machine learning. That's the future. He picked up a folder from his desk and slid it across the glass surface. We're eliminating your position, effective immediately. It's a restructuring. Nothing personal. I looked at the folder. Inside, I knew, was a severance agreement, a non-disparagement clause, and a strict NDA. I looked back at Gavin. He was already checking his Apple Watch, bored. He had fired the person responsible for the company's financial arterial system, and he was checking his heart rate rings. You're firing me? I asked, just to hear him say it again. We're transitioning you out, he corrected. We have a team of juniors in Manila. Brilliant kids. Hungry. They cost a third of what you do. I'm going to have them take over the maintenance scripts. It's just Python, right? Code is code. I can write Python now. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was remarkably clear. There was a moment, a split second, where I considered fighting for it. I considered explaining the complexity of the encryption protocols, the fragility of the legacy database, and the absolute necessity of the two-factor authentication token that lived on my phone. But then I looked at his face. The arrogance. The smug certainty that he was the smartest person in the room because he had the C-suite title. He didn't want to know how the sausage was made. He just wanted to fire the butcher to save money on meat. Okay, I said. I didn't open the folder. If that's the decision. It is, Gavin said, standing up and extending a hand. I didn't shake it. HR is waiting in the conference room to go over the offboarding. Please leave your badge and laptop on the desk when you're done. I need to transfer the root credentials, I said. It was the last lifeline I would throw him. The VaultPay account. It's tied to my personal cell phone number for the 2FA security check. We need to log in and change it to yours. Gavin laughed. A short, sharp bark. Mason, stop. You don't work here anymore. Stop trying to make yourself indispensable. It's pathetic. It's a security protocol, Gavin. If you don't change the phone number, we will figure it out. He snapped, his face flushing slightly. I have a lunch meeting with the board in 10 minutes. I don't have time to sit here and watch you type passwords. Just email the credentials to the IT support inbox. We'll update the settings later. It's just a setting in a dashboard. A junior can do it. I stared at him. I really looked at him. I memorized the way his fleece vest zipped up to his chin. I memorized the dismissal in his eyes. Okay, I said softly. Good luck, Gavin. Yeah. Thanks for your service. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. He sat back down and started typing. He didn't watch me leave. I walked out of the glass fishbowl. I walked past the rows of desks where the junior developers sat, wearing their headphones, unaware that the safety net had just been cut. I went to HR. I signed the papers. I handed over my badge. I did not change the phone number on the VaultPay account. Gavin wanted efficiency? He was about to find out exactly how efficient my code really was. The walk from the fishbowl to the human resources department felt like a funeral procession of one. The OmniCard office was designed to look like an adult playground, exposed brick, neon signs that said hustle, and a kombucha tap in the break room, but in that moment, it felt like a sterile processing plant. I passed the ping-pong table where the sales team played during lunch. I passed the whiteboard walls covered in architectural diagrams I had drawn 3 years ago. They were already being erased by a junior developer to make room for a Q4 AI strategy mind map. I was being deleted. Not just my employment, but my history. Mrs. Gable in HR was a nice woman who had been there almost as long as I had. She refused to meet my eyes. She stared at a script on her desk, her hands clasped tightly over a manila folder. This is never easy, Mason, she said, her voice tight. But the company is moving in a new strategic direction. I know, Linda. Just give me the pen. I signed the papers without reading the fine print. I knew what they said. I was agreeing not to sue. I was agreeing not to steal intellectual property. I was agreeing to a strict non-disparagement clause that prevented me from bad-mouthing Apex Partners or its leadership on social media. In exchange, I got 4 weeks of severance pay and kept my health insurance for the rest of the month. 4 weeks of pay for 5 years of building the engine that printed their money. It was almost funny. We need your laptop, she said softly. And your badge. I need to send one last email, I said. Gavin asked for the credential dump. I need to send the passwords to the IT support inbox. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. But I have to watch you do it. Protocol. I opened my MacBook Pro for the last time. The screen was cluttered with terminal windows and sticky notes, the digital detritus of a busy mind. I closed them all until only the email client remained. I composed a new message. To support at Omnicart. Com CC, Gavin. M at Omnicart. Com subject, handover, root credentials and access keys. I attached an encrypted zip file containing the KeyPass database. This database held the keys to the kingdom, the AWS root login, the database master password, the CDN configs, and, crucial to the ticking clock in my head, the login for VaultPay. I typed the body of the email slowly, ensuring Linda could see I wasn't stealing anything. Gavin. For your instruction, attached is the full credential dump for the back-end infrastructure. The master password for the zip file is the standard internal admin code. I paused. My fingers hovered over the keys. I had a moral obligation to warn them one last time. I typed. Important note, the VaultPay root account is currently secured with two-factor authentication tied to my personal device, 555-0199. As discussed in your office, this needs to be rotated to a company-controlled device immediately. Until you update this setting, you will not be able to authorize critical changes or API key rotations. Good luck, Mason. I hit send. The email swooshed away. It was logged in the company server. It was archived in the cloud. It was legal proof that I had handed over the keys and warned them about the lock. Done, I said. I shut the laptop. It felt like closing a book on a third of my life. I handed the computer to Linda. She put a sticker on it that said terminated / to be wiped. I'll get security to walk you out, she whispered. I know the way, Linda. I went back to my desk to collect my personal effects. It didn't take long. A mechanical keyboard, Cherry MX blue switches, the loud ones Gavin hated, a dying succulent that hadn't seen natural light in 6 months, and a framed photo of my dog. As I was putting the keyboard into a cardboard box, I felt a presence behind me. Mason? It was Sarah. She was a junior dev I had hired a year ago. She was bright, eager, and terrified of making mistakes, the kind of engineer who checks her code 3 times before committing. She looked at the box in my hands, then at my badge lying on the empty desk. Are you moving desks? She asked, though she clearly knew the answer. I'm out, Sarah, I said, keeping my voice low. Restructuring. Her face went pale. But we have the database migration next week. And the Black Friday load tests. Who is going to run the load balancer configs? You are, I said. Me? Her eyes widened in panic. I don't know Ngink's configurations. I barely know how to restart the pods. You always handle the scaling. You're smart, Sarah. You'll figure it out. Just read the documentation. I commented everything. But Gavin said, she stopped, glancing toward the glass fishbowl where Gavin was now laughing on a phone call. Gavin said the system runs itself. I picked up my box. I looked at Sarah. I wanted to tell her to quit. I wanted to tell her to run before the building collapsed on top of her. But I had signed the non-disparagement agreement 5 minutes ago. The system runs itself, I repeated, until it doesn't. I walked toward the elevators. I didn't look back at the fishbowl. I didn't look back at the server room. The elevator ride down to the lobby took 30 seconds. When the doors opened, the security guard, a guy named Ralph I talked football with every Monday, looked at the box in my hands. He frowned. Moving out, Mason? Yeah, Ralph. Moving on. Damn shame. You were the only one who knew how to fix the Wi-Fi in the lobby. It's just a router reboot, Ralph. Unplug it, count to 10, plug it back in. I'll miss you, buddy. I walked out the revolving doors and into the harsh, blinding sunlight of the parking lot. The air smelled of exhaust and hot asphalt. It was 11:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. For the first time in 5 years, I had nowhere to be. I walked to my 10-year-old sedan, put the box on the passenger seat, and sat behind the wheel. I didn't start the car immediately. I pulled out my phone. I opened the calendar app. I scrolled forward. October 14th. It was exactly 89 days away. I created a new event. I didn't name it Revenge. I didn't name it Disaster. I typed, VaultPay rotation. I set the alert to high priority. Then I started the car, backed out of my spot, and drove away from OmniCart. As I merged onto the highway, I checked my rearview mirror. The glass building glittered in the sun, a monument to modern efficiency. Inside that building, a Python script was sleeping. It was waiting for a signal that would never come. And the man who held the remote control was driving west, listening to the radio, and thinking about what kind of sandwich he was going to eat for lunch. The handshake was broken. The clock was ticking. The first Monday after you lose a job like that is the hardest. It's not the lack of money. I had been paid well and lived below my means, stacking cash in index funds for a rainy day. It's the silence. For 5 years, my biological clock had been synced to the pulse of OmniCart. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. I checked the Datadog dashboards at 6:35 a.m. I scanned the overnight error logs at 6:45 a.m. while the coffee brewed. My brain was wired to process a constant stream of alerts, Slack notifications, and Jira tickets. I was a node in a network, constantly transmitting and receiving. On that first Monday, I woke up at 6:30 a.m. out of habit. I reached for my phone to check the server load. Then I remembered. I didn't have access. The app was gone. My credentials had been revoked. The dashboard was black. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, feeling a sensation that amputees describe as a phantom limb. I could feel the itch of the server status. I could feel the weight of the morning stand-up meeting pressing on my chest. But when I reached out to touch it, there was nothing there. Just empty air and a quiet apartment. I spent the first week trying to decompress. I told myself this was a vacation. I went hiking in the state park. I finally beat Elden Ring. I fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom that I had been ignoring for 6 months because I was too busy optimizing database queries. But you can't turn off an engineer's brain that easily. I found myself checking OmniCart's public-facing website, inspecting the page source, looking for signs of degradation. Load time, 1.2 seconds. It used to be 0.8 seconds. Search latency, 400 milliseconds. Acceptable, but slipping. They were drifting. Not crashing, just getting sloppy. The crisp, tight ship I had run was starting to fray at the ropes. I avoided LinkedIn for a while, but eventually, morbid curiosity got the better of me. I logged in and saw Gavin's face smiling back at me from the top of my feed. He had posted a picture of himself standing in front of a whiteboard covered in buzzwords like synergy, AI first, and hyperscale. The caption read: Incredible first month at OmniCart. We are shedding the legacy weight and moving at the speed of light. Record efficiency. The team is leaner, hungrier, and ready to disrupt. Hashtag leadership, hashtag tech, hashtag growth. Mindset. Legacy weight, I whispered to my empty living room. That was me. I was the weight. Beneath the post, a few of my former colleagues had liked it. Probably out of fear. But Sarah hadn't. 2 weeks in, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a server alert. It was a text from Sarah. Sarah, hey Mason. Hope you're doing okay. It's weird here. I hesitated. My severance agreement had a strict clause about not soliciting employees or interfering with operations. But responding to a personal text wasn't a breach. Me, I'm good, Sarah. Enjoying the downtime. How's the migration going? Sarah, nightmare. Gavin fired the QA lead yesterday. Said automated testing is enough. We pushed a hotfix to production this morning and it broke the mobile checkout for an hour. Gavin blamed us. Said we aren't owning the outcome. I winced. Firing QA before a major migration was suicide. It was like firing the brake inspector before a drag race. Me, keep your head down. Document everything. If he gives you a verbal order to skip a safety check, send him an email confirming it. Just to clarify per our conversation. Sarah, I know. I'm doing that. But everyone is scared. He keeps talking about offshoring everything. I think I'm next. I stared at the screen. I felt a surge of guilt. I had built that team. I had trained Sarah. Now I was sitting on my couch drinking coffee while the wolf was eating the sheep. But what could I do? I warned them. I sent the email. Sarah, also. IT is complaining about the VaultPay account. They tried to log in to update the billing address, but it asked for a code sent to a number ending in 99. Is that you? My heart skipped a beat. Me, yes. That's my number. Sarah, I told Gavin. He got annoyed. He said he doesn't have time to chase you down. He told them to just open a ticket with VaultPay support to get it changed. I let out a low, dark laugh. Gavin thought VaultPay support was like Amazon customer service. He thought he could just chat with a bot and get the security protocols waived because he was the CTO. He didn't understand that VaultPay was a financial fortress. To change the root admin number without the current admin's approval required a notarized change of control affidavit, corporate registration documents, and a manual review process that took 72 hours minimum. It was a bureaucratic nightmare designed specifically to prevent hostile takeovers or hackers from stealing accounts. If Gavin had started that process right then, 3 weeks after firing me, he would have been fine. It would have been annoying, but he would have beaten the clock. Me, did he open the ticket? Sarah, I don't think so. He told the juniors to find a workaround. Then he went to lunch with the investors. Find a workaround. There is no workaround for ICE 256 encryption and multi-factor authentication. That's the point. You can't life hack your way through a bank vault. Me, okay. Well, tell him good luck. I put the phone down. August bled into September. The leaves outside my window started to turn orange. I picked up a small consulting gig for a local logistics firm, setting up a simple inventory database. It was easy, low-stress work. The owner thanked me every Friday and paid on time. It felt strange to be appreciated. But the background process in my brain was still running. Projected key expiry, October 14th. I found myself checking the date every morning. September 15th. 30 days remaining. September 30th. 14 days remaining. I hadn't heard from Omnicart since Sarah's text. I assumed, perhaps naively, that they had figured it out. Maybe Gavin had swallowed his pride and filled out the paperwork. Maybe the junior devs in Manila were smarter than I gave them credit for. But then, on October 10th, 4 days before the deadline, I saw another post from Gavin. It was a photo of the engineering team. They looked exhausted. Dark circles under their eyes, forced smiles. They were holding champagne glasses. The caption. Q4 push complete. We just migrated the entire front end to a new framework. Zero downtime. The team is crushing it. Who needs legacy code when you have innovation? Hashtag winning. I zoomed in on the photo. In the background, on a monitor, I saw the VaultPay dashboard. It was blurry, but I recognized the color scheme. There was a small, orange banner at the top of the screen. I knew that banner. I had seen it a dozen times over the years. Alert, API key expiring soon. Rotate now. They hadn't fixed it. They hadn't rotated the key. They were staring at the warning sign every single day, and they were ignoring it. Why? Because every time they clicked rotate, the system asked for a code. A code they couldn't get. So they just clicked remind me later and went back to their champagne. Gavin wasn't solving the problem. He was procrastinating it. He was betting that the deadline was soft, or that he could yell at someone to fix it at the last minute. He was driving the bus at 100 miles per hour, ignoring the bridge out signs, convinced that his title alone would make the bridge appear before he hit the gap. I closed the laptop. I walked into my kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand was shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. The phantom limb was itching again. But this time, I knew exactly why. The crash wasn't a possibility anymore. It was a mathematical certainty. I checked my phone settings. Do not disturb was off. The ringer volume was up. I was ready. There is a concept in engineering called normalcy bias. It's the refusal of the human brain to plan for, or react to, a disaster that has never happened before. If the dam has held for 50 years, the villagers in the valley assume it will hold forever, even as cracks spiderweb across the concrete. Omnicart was suffering from a terminal case of normalcy bias. October 11th passed. October 12th passed. I sat in my apartment, watching the days tick off on my wall calendar like a prisoner marking time. I kept expecting a frantic phone call. I expected a LinkedIn message from a panic-stricken junior developer. I expected a black sedan to pull up to my curb with a notary and a change of control document. But there was only silence. The silence was the worst part. It meant they weren't frantically trying to solve the problem and failing. It meant they didn't even know the problem existed. Or worse, they saw the warning banner, API key expiring, and treated it like a software update reminder. Remind me tomorrow. Remind me tomorrow. I spent the morning of October 13th, the day before the crash, reading the VaultPay API documentation again. I wanted to be absolutely certain. Was there a loophole? Was there an auto-renew feature I had missed in the latest patch notes? I combed through the version 4.2 changelog. Security protocol update, automated key rotation strictly requires MFA validation via registered root device. No exceptions. Legacy fallback methods disabled as of Q1 2024. There it was. In black and white. There was no backdoor. There was no grace period. VaultPay was a fortress, and Gavin had locked himself outside and thrown away the key. I went to a coffee shop that afternoon. I needed to get out of the apartment. I brought a book, but I couldn't read. I found myself staring at the people in line. They were buying lattes, checking their emails, living their lives. I wondered how many of them were Omnicart customers. Somewhere in Ohio, a construction foreman was adding a generator to his cart for a project starting on Thursday. Somewhere in Detroit, a factory manager was ordering replacement belts for a conveyor system. They assumed the transaction would work. They trusted the system because the system had always worked. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of guilt. These people didn't deserve this. The junior developers, Sarah, Jason, the kids in Manila, didn't deserve this. They were going to be the ones in the trenches when the shells started falling. Gavin would be in his office, yelling at them to fix it, while they stared at error logs they didn't understand. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I opened the dialer. I typed Gavin's number. My thumb hovered over the green call button. I could save them. One call. Hey, Gavin, put your ego aside. You're about to hit an iceberg. Start the paperwork now, and I'll walk you through a temporary bypass. I could be the bigger man. I could be the professional. Then I remembered the exit interview. We need architects, not plumbers. Stop trying to make yourself indispensable. It's pathetic. If I called him now, he wouldn't see it as a rescue. He would see it as me being desperate to stay relevant. He would sneer. He would say, thanks for the tip, Mason, but we have it under control. We're migrating to Stripe anyway. And if I fixed it for him? If I gave him the code? He would learn nothing. He would continue to fire senior engineers, cut QA, and treat the infrastructure like a magic box that didn't need maintenance. He would fail upwards, buoyed by the safety net I kept stitching together for him. Sometimes, the only way to teach someone the value of a parachute is to let them jump out of the plane without one. I deleted the number. I put the phone away. I went home. The sun went down on October 13th. The city lights of Chicago flickered on. From my balcony, I could look east, toward the business district where the OmniCard office sat. I imagined the servers humming in the dark room on the 14th floor. Rotator. I was sleeping. It was a simple script. 200 lines of Python. It didn't have feelings. It didn't have a grudge. It simply had a condition. If input equals null, abort. The script was loyal. It was the only thing left in that building that was loyal to me. I ordered a pizza. I watched a movie. I tried to act normal. But my body was vibrating with the frequency of a coming storm. At 10 p.m., I prepared my workspace. I set up my laptop on the desk. I opened a terminal window and SSH'd into a private server I ran, nothing to do with OmniCard, just my own sandbox. I wanted to be at a keyboard when it happened. It felt respectful. Like a captain standing on the bridge of a sinking ship, even if I was watching from shore. At 11:30 p.m., I brushed my teeth. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. It's not your fault, I told the reflection. The reflection didn't answer. I got into bed. I placed my phone on the nightstand, volume set to maximum. The countdown had begun. 3 hours and 30 minutes until the wake-up call. 9 hours and 30 minutes until the market opened. 10 hours until the silence ended. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I just drifted, waiting for the buzz. 2:59 a.m. I was awake before the alarm. I was awake before the notification. I was lying on my back, staring at the shadows cast by the streetlights on the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic thrum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. In the movies, the countdown to a disaster is loud. There are sirens, ticking clocks, and Hans Zimmer score swelling in the background. But in the real world of systems engineering, the apocalypse is silent. It is a Boolean value flipping from true to false on a silicon chip buried in a data center. I watched the digits on my bedside clock flip. 2:59. 3 o'clock. BZZZT. BZZZT. The sound was violent in the stillness of the room. My phone, resting on the nightstand, vibrated against the wood. The screen lit up, casting a harsh, spectral blue glow across the duvet. I didn't move. I didn't reach for it. I just turned my head and looked at the notification banner. Messages, now VaultPay security, your verification code for API key rotation is 884 to 291. This code expires in 10 minutes. There it was. The lifeline. In my mind's eye, I projected myself 20 miles east, into the OmniCart server room. I could see the rack, row 4, slot B. I could see the blinking green activity LED on the primary application server. Inside that metal box, my script, Rotator. I had just woken up. It had executed its primary function, request_new_key. It had successfully pinged VaultPay's API. VaultPay had responded, okay, but prove you're a human. Now, the script was pausing. The cursor in the terminal log was blinking. Awaiting input. It was waiting for me. It was waiting for the janitor to come and mop up the security floor so the executives could walk on it in the morning without slipping. I stared at the code on the screen, 884 to 291. 6 numbers. That was the price of OmniCart survival. If I typed those 6 numbers into a terminal window right now, the crisis would vanish. The key would rotate. The database would update. Business would continue as usual. Gavin would get his bonus. The juniors would keep their jobs. I felt a phantom twitch in my hand. It was muscle memory. For 5 years, I had grabbed the phone, typed the code, and gone back to sleep. It was instinct. I sat up in bed. I swung my legs over the side, my feet touching the cold hardwood floor. I looked at my laptop bag sitting on the desk across the room. It was 10 feet away. Just do it, a voice in my head whispered. It was the voice of the engineer. The engineer hates entropy. The engineer hates broken systems. The engineer wants to fix things. Be the better man. Save the ship. Then invoice them for it later. I stood up. I took one step toward the desk. Then I stopped. I remembered the look on Gavin's face when I tried to warn him. I remembered the dismissal. It's just a setting. We'll figure it out. If I fixed it now, I wouldn't be saving the company. I would be enabling the rot. I would be proving Gavin right, that the system does run itself, that the janitors aren't needed, that you can treat technical infrastructure with contempt and suffer no consequences. No, I whispered to the empty room. I sat back down on the edge of the bed. I watched the phone. 3:05 a.m. 5 minutes remaining. The script was still waiting. The cursor was still blinking in the dark. 3:08 a.m. 2 minutes. I imagined the script getting anxious, if code could feel anxiety. It was checking its internal timer. Timeout equals 600 seconds. It was approaching the limit. 3:09 a.m. 1 minute. I lay back down. I pulled the covers up to my chin. I stared at the phone screen until it dimmed and went black. 3:11 a.m. The window closed. On the server, the script hit the 600-second mark. The logic gate triggered. Exception, timeout error. Input not received. Action, abort rotation. The script terminated. The process ID died. The server went back to idle. The API key, the current one, the one generated 90 days ago in July, was still active. It worked. If a customer bought a drill right now at 3:12 a.m., the transaction would clear. But the key had an expiration timestamp attached to its metadata, October 14, 9 o'clock UTC. It was a dead man walking. It had 6 hours of life left. I closed my eyes. I thought I would feel guilty. I thought I would feel panic. Instead, I felt a strange, cold calm. The die was cast. The missile had left the silo. There was no abort button anymore. Even if I wanted to fix it now, I couldn't. The script had finished its run. To trigger it again, someone would have to manually log into the server and execute the command. And the only people with the passwords to do that were sleeping in their beds, dreaming of synergy, unaware that they were already underwater. I didn't sleep, though. I lay there in the dark, watching the hours drift by. 4 a.m. 5 a.m. 6 a.m. The sun began to rise over Chicago. The sky turned a bruised purple, then a pale, watery gray. At 7 a.m., I got up for real. I showered. I shaved. I put on a clean shirt. I made coffee, a pour-over, precise and slow. I watched the water bloom over the grounds. I opened my laptop, but I didn't try to log into OmniCart. I opened the public website. www.omnicart.com. It looked normal. The hero banner was advertising a fall blowout sale. The carousel of products was spinning. I clicked on a $400 table saw. I added it to my cart. I went to the checkout page. The credit card form loaded perfectly. The system was in what we call a zombie state. The brain was dead, but the body was still walking. I checked the time. 8:30 a.m. The OmniCart office would be waking up. The junior devs, Sarah and Jason, would be grabbing their coffees, settling into their ergonomically correct chairs. They would be checking the overnight logs. They would see the error in the rotator. iLog. Error, timeout. They might frown. They might message each other. Hey, did the key rotate last night? They would check the VaultPay dashboard. They would see the big red banner, key expires in 30 minutes. Panic would set in. They would try to rotate it manually. They would click the button. Please enter the code sent to. They would realize. I took a sip of my coffee. It was perfect. Not too bitter, not too acidic. 8:50 a.m. 10 minutes. I imagined Gavin walking into the office. He probably had a meeting at 9 o'clock. Maybe a stand-up to discuss Q4 velocity. He would be holding his latte. He would be smiling. He had no idea that the floor he was walking on was about to dissolve. I opened a second tab on my browser. I navigated to my bank account. I wanted to make sure my routing number was handy. Consulting fees are expensive, especially for emergency incident response. 8:59 a.m. I sat in my chair, staring at the OmniCart checkout screen where I had the table saw ready to buy. I hovered my mouse over the place order button. The clock on my laptop toolbar changed. 9 a.m. The key died. I clicked place order. The loading spinner appeared. It spun. And spun. And spun. Usually, this takes 800 milliseconds. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. The server was trying to talk to VaultPay. It was holding out the API key, smiling, asking for money. VaultPay was looking at the key, checking the timestamp, and slamming the door. 5 seconds. The spinner stopped. A red box appeared at the top of the screen. Error, payment could not be processed. Please try again or contact support. And so it begins, I whispered. I took another sip of coffee. Then, I picked up my phone and set the ringer volume to maximum. In the world of networked computers, 9 a.m. is not a rough estimate. It is an atomic certainty. At the exact microsecond the internal clock of the VaultPay master server ticked over, a logic gate snapped shut. The cryptographic hash that had authorized OmniCart's transactions for the last 90 days, a string of alphanumeric characters starting with SK_live_774, was moved from the active table to the revoked table. It was a silent death. There was no explosion, no sparks, no smell of burning ozone. But the effect was immediate and catastrophic. At 9 hours and 1 second a.m., a contractor in Indianapolis named Dave hit submit payment for a $12,000 order of lumber. OmniCart server caught the request. It packaged the credit card token, the amount, and the merchant ID into a JSON packet. It stamped the packet with the API key SK_live_774 and hurled it across the internet to VaultPay's data center in Virginia. The packet arrived at VaultPay's gate. The gatekeeper checked the ID. Status, expired. Action, reject. VaultPay sent a response packet back. It was small, cold, and final. HTTP status code, 401. Message, unauthorized. Dave in Indianapolis stared at his screen. Payment failed. He frowned, assumed he mistyped his CVV number, and tried again. At 9 hours and 5 seconds a.m., 10 more errors occurred. At 9 hours and 30 seconds a.m., 500 errors occurred. The dam had burst, but instead of water flooding in, the river had simply dried up. Inside the OmniCart headquarters, the atmosphere was still caffeinated and casual. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sales team was on their headsets, bragging about Q3 numbers. The junior developers were scrolling Reddit, waiting for their stand-up meeting. On the south wall of the engineering pit hung the big board. It was an 80-inch 4K monitor that displayed the company's heartbeat, real-time revenue. Usually, this graph looked like a rugged mountain range, climbing steadily upward as the East Coast and Midwest woke up and started ordering. It was a jagged green line that tracked dollars per minute. At this time of day, it usually hovered around $3,000 per minute. Sarah was the first to notice. She was walking past the break room with a mug of tea when she glanced at the screen. She stopped. The green line hadn't just dipped. It had fallen off a cliff. It plummeted straight down, a vertical drop that looked like a glitch in the rendering software. It hit the x-axis. 0. And then, it stayed there. A flat, dead line crawling across the bottom of the screen. That's weird, she muttered. She walked over to Jason's desk. Hey, did the dashboard front end crash? The graph is flatlining. Jason looked up, headphones around his neck. Probably just a WebSocket timeout. I'll refresh it. He typed a command. The dashboard refreshed. The line was still flat. Current revenue, last 5 minutes, $0. That's not a display error, Jason said, his voice losing its casual edge. Suddenly, a sound cut through the office buzz. It was the sound of 100 phones ringing at once. The customer support bank, located on the far side of the floor, lit up like a Christmas tree. Every single light on the switchboard turned red simultaneously. Support is blowing up, Sarah whispered. She ran back to her desk. She opened Slack. The hashtag general channel was silent, but hashtag urgent incidents had a red badge with the number 99 plus. She clicked it. The messages were scrolling so fast she couldn't read them. Payments failing. Can't check out. Customer says card declined. Is the site down? 500 errors everywhere. Sarah opened her terminal. She SSH'd into the production log server. Her hands were shaking. She ran a command to tail the live error logs. Tail f/var/log/omnicart/payment_gateway. Log. The screen didn't just scroll, it blurred. White text cascaded down the black terminal like a waterfall. Error, 9:02 and 14 seconds, VaultPay response, 401 unauthorized error, 9:02 and 14 seconds, VaultPay response, 401 unauthorized error, 9:02 and 15 seconds, VaultPay response, 401 unauthorized error, 9:02 and 15 seconds, VaultPay response, 401 unauthorized. 401, Sarah said aloud. Oh God, she knew exactly what 401 meant. It didn't mean the server was down. It didn't mean the database was corrupt. It meant we don't have the keys to the building. Jason. She yelled across the quiet engineering pit. Heads turned. It's the API key. The VaultPay key expired. What? Jason spun his chair around. I thought the script handled that. The script failed. Sarah shouted, typing frantically to find the cron logs. It timed out last night. Look at the timestamps. It stopped at 3:11 a.m. Just then, the glass door of the fishbowl office slammed open. Gavin stormed out. He was holding his phone in one hand and a half-eaten bagel in the other. He looked annoyed, not panicked. Why is support messaging me? He barked. They say nobody can buy anything. Is the database locking up again? I told you guys to optimize the queries. The room went deadly silent. All eyes turned to Gavin. Sarah stood up. She felt sick. She was the messenger, and she was about to deliver a grenade. It's not the database, Gavin, she said, her voice trembling. It's VaultPay. The API key expired at 9 a.m. Gavin froze. He chewed his bagel slowly. Expired? Why? The system rotates it automatically. Mason wrote a script. The script failed, Sarah said. It needs a two-factor authentication code to complete the rotation. So? Gavin threw his hands up. So type the code. Why are we standing here? Fix it. We can't, Sarah said. The code isn't sent to us. Who is it sent to? Sarah took a deep breath. She looked at the red banner on her screen. Admin phone, -8921. It's sent to Mason, she said. Gavin stopped chewing. The color drained from his face, leaving him a pale, pasty white. Mason? He whispered. The root admin account, Sarah explained, speaking slowly as if to a child. It's still linked to his personal cell phone. The script tried to run last night. It asked for a code. Mason didn't give it. So the rotation timed out. And now the old key is dead. Gavin stared at the big board. The green line was still flat. Revenue lost, $12,000,000. And counting. Well. Gavin stammered. Well, change it. Log in and change the phone number to mine. I'm trying. Jason yelled from his desk. I'm on the VaultPay admin panel right now. I clicked update profile. It says. Jason paused. He looked at Gavin with wide, terrified eyes. It says, to update this setting, please enter the verification code sent to ending in 8921. Gavin dropped his bagel. It hit the floor with a dull thud. You're joking, he hissed. I can't change the number without the code, Jason said. And I can't get the code without the number. Call support. Gavin screamed. The vein in his neck bulged. Get VaultPay on the phone. Tell them who I am. Tell them it's an emergency. I'm on hold. Another dev shouted. Estimated wait time is 45 minutes. 45 minutes? Gavin looked at the big board. Revenue lost, $18,000,000. Every second that ticked by was another $100 burning up in the atmosphere. The office, usually a place of quiet clicking and low murmurs, was descending into chaos. Salespeople were standing on their desks, shouting at engineering. Support staff were weeping into their headsets. And in the center of it all stood Gavin, the optimization expert, the man who had fired the janitor because he thought the building cleaned itself. He looked at his phone. He looked at Sarah. Does anyone? He swallowed hard. Does anyone have Mason's number? Sarah looked at him with a mix of pity and contempt. I do, she said. Call him, Gavin ordered. Put it on speaker. Sarah dialed. The room went silent. Everyone held their breath. Ring. 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 Hello? Mason's voice filled the room. It was calm. Relaxed. He sounded like a man who was enjoying a very good cup of coffee. Mason. Gavin yelled at the phone. It's Gavin. We have a situation. Oh? Mason said. Who is this? It's Gavin. The CTO. The site is down. The VaultPay key expired. That sounds like a back-end infrastructure problem, Mason said. I thought you had a team of brilliant juniors to handle that. Mason, listen to me. Gavin was sweating now. It's asking for a code. It sent a code to your phone. I need you to read it to me. I'm sorry, Mason said. I'm watching a movie right now. I don't really have time to check my messages. I will sue you. Gavin shrieked. I will sue you for sabotage. Sabotage? Mason laughed. It was a cold sound. I didn't touch your system, Gavin. I haven't logged in for 3 months. You fired me. You revoked my access. If your system is broken, that's an operational failure. Not my problem. Mason, please. Gavin's voice cracked. We are losing thousands of dollars a minute. I know, Mason said. I'm looking at the public site. You can't even buy a hammer. What do you want? Gavin whispered. Just tell me what you want. I want you to admit it, Mason said. Admit what? Admit that you needed a plumber. Gavin looked around the room. 50 employees were staring at him. The big board showed $0. He closed his eyes. I needed a plumber, Gavin whispered. I can't hear you, Mason said. I needed a plumber. Gavin screamed at the phone. Good, Mason said. Now, let's talk about my consulting fee. Let's talk about my consulting fee. Those words hung in the air of the OmniCart engineering pit like smoke. But before Gavin could respond, before he could haggle or threaten or beg, the line went dead. Click. Mason had hung up. Gavin stared at the phone in Sarah's hand as if it had just bitten him. The silence in the office was deafening, broken only by the relentless, manic ringing of the customer support lines in the background. He hung up, Gavin whispered. Then, a flush of rage crept up his neck. He hung up on me. He kicked a trash can. It clattered across the polished concrete floor, spilling empty Red Bull cans and crumpled protein bar wrappers. He's bluffing, Gavin announced, turning to face the terrified engineering team. He's trying to squeeze us. It's extortion. I won't pay it. I will not negotiate with terrorists. He clapped his hands together, a sharp, violent sound. War room. Now. Everyone in the fishbowl. We are going to solve this internally. We are engineers. We build things. We fix things. We don't need a washed-up legacy hire to type 6 numbers for us. 10 minutes later, the glass-walled office was crowded with the 6 most senior developers left at the company, plus Sarah and Jason. The air conditioner was blasting, but the room smelled of nervous sweat and stale coffee. On the wall monitor, Gavin had pulled up the architecture diagram of the payment system. He was drawing red lines over it with a dry erase marker, his movements jerky and frantic. Okay, Gavin said, tapping the whiteboard. The problem is the handshake. The server sends a request, VaultPay asks for a code, we don't have the code. Simple logic puzzle. It's not a puzzle, Gavin, Jason said, his voice quiet. It's encryption. It's math. Everything is hackable. Gavin snapped. What if we bypass the rotation script? What if we just hardcode a new key into the database? We don't have a new key, Sarah pointed out, exhausted. The only way to get a new key is to ask VaultPay for one. And they won't give it to us without the 2FA code. What if we disable the check? Gavin suggested wild-eyed. On our side. Just comment out the lines in the code that look for the verification. Sarah looked at him with genuine pity. This was the man running the technology department? Gavin, she said slowly. The check isn't happening on our server. It's happening on theirs. We can change our code all we want. We can delete the entire script. It doesn't matter. VaultPay's server is the one saying no. We can't edit their code unless you want to break into a data center in Virginia like Mission Impossible. Gavin threw the marker at the wall. It bounced off the whiteboard and rolled under the table. There has to be a back door, he yelled. Mason must have left a back door. He's lazy. Lazy engineers always leave back doors. He wasn't lazy, Jason muttered. He was thorough. Check the logs. Gavin ordered. Check the Git history. Look for a hard-coded override password. Look for a recovery email. Anything. For the next 30 minutes, the team frantically grepped through millions of lines of code. They searched for strings like password, admin, override, and temp. They found nothing. Mason's code was clean. It was depressingly, perfectly secure. While they typed, Gavin was on the phone with VaultPay Enterprise Support. He had finally gotten through to a human being after 45 minutes of hold music. Yes, I am the Chief Technology Officer, Gavin said into his cell phone, pacing the small room like a caged tiger. My name is Gavin Miller. I am authorizing a manual override of the 2FA on account number 88,392. He paused, listening. I told you, the person who owns that phone number is no longer with the company. He is a disgruntled former employee holding us hostage. He listened again. His face turned a shade of purple I had never seen on a human being. What do you mean identity verification? Gavin shrieked. I am verifying my identity right now. I am yelling at you. Do I sound like a hacker? The room went silent as everyone listened to Gavin's side of the conversation. A notary? Gavin whispered. You want me to find a notary public? He slumped into his chair. And then fax it? Who uses a fax machine? Okay. And once you receive the fax, how long until the number is updated? Gavin closed his eyes. He let the phone slide down his cheek. 72 hours, he said to the room. Standard security processing time. He dropped the phone onto the desk. 72 hours, Jason repeated. Gavin, we lose $4 million a day. In 3 days, we lose $12 million. We won't make payroll next week. I know. Gavin snapped. Suddenly, the door to the fishbowl opened. It wasn't an engineer. It was the CEO, Marcus Thorne. Thorne was a terrifying man. He represented Apex Partners, the private equity firm. He didn't care about code. He didn't care about velocity or stack modernization. He cared about the relentless, upward movement of the green line on the big board. He walked into the room. He looked at the whiteboard covered in frantic red scribbles. He looked at the terrified developers. Finally, he looked at Gavin. Gavin, Thorne said. His voice was dangerously calm. Marcus, Gavin scrambled to his feet. We're handling it. It's a legacy infrastructure issue. A bug in the old code. I just got off the phone with the board, Thorne said. They are looking at the live revenue tracker. It says 0. It has said 0 for 90 minutes. We have a plan, Gavin stammered. We're working with the vendor too. I don't care about the vendor, Thorne interrupted. I asked the VP of sales what is happening. He told me the API key expired. He told me the only person who can fix it is Mason. Gavin flinched at the name. Mason is uncooperative. He's asking for money. Thorne's eyes narrowed. Money? How much? He's extorting us. Gavin cried, trying to regain the moral high ground. He wants a consulting fee. It's blackmail. How much, Gavin? $200,000, Gavin whispered. Thorne stared at him. Then he looked at his watch. We have lost $300,000 in revenue since I walked into this room, Thorne said. But pay him, Thorne said. Marcus, we can't let him win. It sets a precedent. It's pay him, Thorne roared. The sound shook the glass walls. I don't care if he wants a pony and a trip to Mars. You fired the only guy who knew how to fly the plane, and now we are crashing. Get him on the phone. Wire him the money. Turn the store back on. Thorne leaned in close to Gavin's face. And Gavin? If the site isn't up in 30 minutes, don't bother buying a return ticket for Manila. You're done. Thorne turned and walked out. The room was deadly silent. Gavin stood there, shaking. He looked at his war room. He looked at the optimizations he had made. He looked at the team he had terrorized for 3 months. He realized, finally, that he wasn't the smartest guy in the room. He was just the guy holding the bag. Sarah, Gavin croaked. His voice was dry. Yes, Gavin? Dial the number. Mason? Yes. Sarah picked up the phone. She hit redial. Ring. Ring. Hello? Mason's voice returned. Still calm. Still drinking coffee. Gavin took the phone. He didn't scream this time. He didn't threaten. Mason, Gavin said. He sounded like a man who had just watched his house burn down. Hello, Gavin. Did you figure out the puzzle? No, Gavin said. We didn't. I assume you tried to hack the database? Yes. And you tried to call VaultPay support? Yes. And they told you about the notary? Yes. There was a pause on the line. A long, humiliating silence. I'm sending the wire, Gavin said. 200,000. To your personal account. The one on file for payroll. That works, Mason said. Make it an immediate wire. I'll wait for the notification from my bank. It might take a few minutes to clear. That's fine, Mason said cheerfully. I have nowhere to be. I'm unemployed, remember? Gavin logged into the corporate banking portal. His hands were shaking so bad he mistyped his password twice. Finally, he got in. He initiated a one-time emergency transfer. Amount, $200,000.00. Recipient, Mason J. Memo, Consulting Services. He hit send. Sent, Gavin whispered. We wait, Mason said. The next 10 minutes were the longest of Gavin's life. The entire room watched the clock. The big board stared down at them, a flat green line of failure. Ding. A chime sounded over the speakerphone. Received, Mason said. Pleasure doing business with you, Omni, Cart. The code, Gavin begged. Give me the code. Hold on, Mason said. I have to wake up my laptop. I have to SSH into the server. I have to run the script. Gavin could hear the clicking of mechanical keys in the background. Click clack click clack. The sound of the Cherry MX blue switches he used to hate. Now, it sounded like the most beautiful music in the world. Okay, Mason said. Script initiated. It's asking for the code. My phone just buzzed. Read it. Your verification code, Mason said clearly, is 992 to 410. Gavin typed it into the VaultPay admin panel on Jason's computer. His fingers slipped on the keys. 9, 9, 2, 4, 1, 0. He hit enter. The screen froze for a second. Then, a green banner appeared. Success. API key rotated. New key active. It's green. Sarah yelled. It accepted it. Check the site. Gavin yelled. Jason refreshed the https://www.google.com/search. Q equals Omnicart. Com checkout page. He hit place order. The spinner spun. 1 second. 2 seconds. Order confirmed. Thank you for your purchase. It works. Jason shouted. Everyone turned to look at the big board. The flat line at the bottom of the screen twitched. Then it jumped. Then it spiked. Current revenue, last 1 minute, $4,500. The money was flowing again. The arterial blockage was cleared. Gavin slumped against the desk, bracing himself with both arms. He was drenched in sweat. He felt like he was going to vomit. Mason? Gavin said into the phone. It worked. I know it worked, Mason said. I wrote the code. Are we good? Gavin asked. For the next 90 days? You're good, Mason said. But Gavin? Yeah? In 89 days? You're going to need that notary. Click. Mason hung up. Gavin stared at the phone. The room erupted in cheers around him. The juniors were high-fiving. Sarah was crying with relief. But Gavin didn't cheer. He looked at the big board. The green line was climbing, erasing his mistake. But he knew, with absolute certainty, that the red line on his career had just bottomed out. He looked up, and through the glass wall of the fishbowl, he saw the CEO, Marcus Thorne, standing on the other side of the engineering pit. Thorne wasn't cheering. He was pointing a finger at Gavin, and then pointing at the door. The silence that follows a disaster is different from the silence that precedes it. Before, the silence is tense, loaded with kinetic energy waiting to be released. Afterward, the silence is heavy. It is the silence of a battlefield where the smoke is clearing, and the survivors are counting the bodies. At OmniCart, the phones had stopped ringing. The red lights on the support dashboard had turned back to a calm, steady green. The big board was once again displaying the comforting, jagged mountain range of revenue. But inside the fishbowl, the atmosphere was funereal. Marcus Thorne, the CEO, sat at the head of the conference table. He didn't yell. He didn't throw things. He simply read the incident report that Sarah had hastily typed up in the last hour. Gavin sat at the far end of the table. He wasn't wearing his fleece vest anymore. It was draped over the back of his chair. He looked smaller, somehow. Deflated. The arrogance that had fueled him for 3 months had evaporated, leaving behind a terrified 28-year-old man who realized he had played a high-stakes game of poker with an empty hand. Read the root cause analysis, Thorne said quietly. He gestured to Sarah. Sarah stood up. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was steady. She had survived the fire. At 9 o'clock UTC, Sarah began, reading from her tablet. The production API key for the VaultPay gateway expired. This expiration was scheduled and expected. The automated rotation script, Rotator. I attempted to renew the key at 3 o'clock UTC but failed due to a timeout on the multi-factor authentication challenge. Why did it time out? Thorne asked, though he knew the answer. Because the 2FA token was sent to a device not in our possession, Sarah said. Specifically, the personal mobile device of the former Lead Backend Engineer. And why was the device not updated? Sarah glanced at Gavin. Gavin stared at the table. Because, Sarah said, choosing her words carefully, the transition of root credentials was not completed during the offboarding process. The administrative access required to change the phone number was declined. Thorne nodded slowly. He turned a page in the report. Total downtime, 58 minutes, Thorne read. Total revenue lost during outage, roughly $640,000. Consulting fee paid to resolve outage, $200,000. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Nearly $1 million, Thorne said. We lit $1 million on fire in one morning because we didn't want to spend 10 minutes updating a phone number. He looked at Gavin. Gavin, do you have anything to add to this report? Gavin cleared his throat. Marcus, I want to contextualize this. We were moving fast. We were prioritizing velocity. In a transition like this, legacy artifacts. Stop, Thorne said. It was a malicious act. Gavin blurted out. Mason held us hostage. He should be in jail. Mason, Thorne said, his voice like ice, fulfilled a contractual request for emergency consulting services. You called him. You agreed to the fee. You wired the money. That's not extortion, Gavin. That's the free market. And right now, the market says you are incompetent. Thorne pointed to the door. Pack your things. HR is waiting. And Gavin? Gavin looked up, tears welling in his eyes. Don't verify any code on your way out. 30 miles away, in my apartment, I was watching the transaction clear on my banking app. Available balance, $212,408. It was a strange feeling. I expected a rush of adrenaline, a fist pump moment. But mostly, I just felt tired. I closed the laptop. The adrenaline of the standoff was fading, replaced by the caffeine crash from the morning's coffee. I walked out onto my balcony. The afternoon sun was warm. I could hear the distant hum of the city. I had won. I had proven my point. I had extracted a year's salary for 5 minutes of work. But as I looked at the skyline, I realized the game wasn't quite over. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I had a text from Sarah. Sarah, he's gone. Thorne fired him on the spot. Security walked him out. I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was fleeting. Gavin had dug his own grave with a shovel made of hubris. Me, who was running engineering. Sarah, Thorne made me interim lead. God help me. I smiled. Sarah was good. She would be fine. She actually read the documentation. Sarah, Mason. We need to talk about the phone number. The key is rotated, so we are safe for 90 days. But in January, this is going to happen again. We paid $200,000 for one code. We didn't buy the account. She was right. I still held the keys. The 2FA was still linked to my SIM card. The $200,000 had bought them a stay of execution, not a pardon. Me, you know the process, Sarah. Change of control form. Notarized. Mailed to VaultPay. Sarah, Thorne knows. He has the legal team drafting it right now. He wants to know if you will sign it. I thought about it. I could drag this out. I could refuse to sign. I could force them to sue me, or make them petition VaultPay for a hostile takeover of the account, which would take months and cost them a fortune in legal fees. I could be the villain they thought I was. But I looked at my bank balance again. $200,000. The debt was paid. The point was made. Me, send the notary to my apartment tomorrow morning. I'll sign it. Sarah, really? Just like that? Me, I'm not a black hat, Sarah. I'm just a consultant who expects to be paid for his time. The invoice is settled. Sarah, thank you, Mason. Seriously. For everything. I put the phone down. I went back inside and looked at my desk. The sticky note with the rotator. My schedule was still stuck to my monitor. Next rotation, January 12th. I peeled it off. I crumpled it into a ball and threw it in the trash. I wasn't the janitor anymore. The building could clean itself now. Or it could rot. It wasn't my problem. I sat down at my computer and opened a new browser tab. I went to a travel website. I had been meaning to visit Japan. I heard the snow in Hokkaido was perfect in January. And since I didn't have to wake up at 3 a.m. to type 6 numbers into a terminal, I figured I would have plenty of time to ski. I booked a flight. First class. As I clicked purchase, I watched the loading spinner. It spun for 800 milliseconds. Transaction approved. I smiled. Good system, I whispered. The notary arrived at my apartment at 10 a.m. the next morning. He was a small, nervous man named Arthur who smelled faintly of peppermints and legal anxiety. He laid the documents out on my kitchen island as if they were the Magna Carta. Transfer of digital assets, he mumbled, pointing a shaky finger at the signature line. And the change of control affidavit for VaultPay Systems Incorporated. I uncapped my pen. It was a strange feeling, signing away the rights to the system I had spent 5 years building. That architecture was my child. I had nursed it through Black Friday crashes, database migrations, and DDoS attacks. I knew every quirk of its code, every hidden dependency, every ghost in the machine. But as the ink dried on the paper, I realized it wasn't my child anymore. It was just a product. And I had sold it for a very fair price. One more thing, Arthur said, reaching into his briefcase. Mr. Thorne asked me to hand-deliver this letter. He slid a heavy, cream-colored envelope across the counter. It had the Apex Partners wax seal on the back. I opened it. Dear Mason. Enclosed is a revised employment contract. We are prepared to offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer, effective immediately. The base salary is double your previous rate, plus significant equity. We need someone who understands the plumbing. The door is open. Marcus Thorne. I stared at the letter. It was the vindication every fired employee dreams of. The company crawling back. The golden parachute. The corner office. I could walk back into that building as the boss. I could sit in the fishbowl. I could fire the people who doubted me. I could fix the culture. I looked at the signing bonus figure. It was substantial. Then I looked at my packed suitcase by the door. I looked at the flight confirmation on my phone. Chicago to Tokyo. Departure, 1400 hours. I remembered the 3 a.m. wake-up calls. I remembered the stress of the 24/7 on-call rotation. I remembered Gavin calling me a janitor. If I went back, I would just be the high-paid janitor. I would be owning the stress again. I took the letter, folded it neatly, and slid it back into the envelope. Arthur? Yes? The notary looked up. Please tell Mr. Thorne that I appreciate the offer. But my consulting rates have gone up. I don't think he can afford me full-time. Arthur blinked, confused, but took the envelope back. I will convey the message. An hour later, I was in an Uber heading to O'Hare International Airport. I pulled out my phone and opened LinkedIn for one last look. The algorithm, cruel as ever, pushed a notification to the top of my feed. Gavin Miller, former CTO at OmniCart, visionary leader, open to work. He had posted a status update 20 minutes ago. Unfortunately, due to philosophical differences regarding legacy infrastructure, I have decided to part ways with OmniCart. I am looking for my next challenge in the AI/Web3 space. A leader knows when to pivot. #growth, #next chapter, #open. 2. Work. There were 0 likes. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt resolved. Gavin was a bug in the system. The system had debugged itself. It was harsh, but it was efficient. I navigated to my own profile. Mason J. Lead Backend Engineer at OmniCart. I clicked the pencil icon. I deleted the title. I typed in a new one. Mason J. Independent Security Consultant. I scrolled down to the About section. It used to list my coding languages: Python, SQL, Go, Docker. I deleted all of it. I replaced it with a single line. I hold the keys. I saved the profile. Then, I opened the OmniCart app on my phone. I logged out. I deleted the app. The car pulled up to the international terminal. The driver, a friendly guy named Sam, turned around. Heading somewhere nice? Japan, I said, opening the door. Business or pleasure? I slung my backpack over my shoulder. I thought about the $212,000 in my bank account. I thought about the notarized papers that freed me from the 3 a.m. alarms. I thought about the silence of the snow in Hokkaido. Pleasure, I said. Strictly pleasure. I walked into the terminal, past the security checkpoint, and toward the gate. Somewhere in the cloud, a Python script named Rotator. I was dormant, waiting for January 12th. When it woke up next time, it would send a code to Sarah. She would type it in. The wheel would turn. The money would flow. The machine would keep running. But for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't the engine. I was just a passenger. And the view from the window was spectacular.